So look, I'm using Pebeo Porcelaine 150 markers today. Now, the first thing you need to do is clean your plate. Now, I did this with hot soapy water and then I rubbed it down with a little bit of methylated spirits, but you don't really need to do that. Now, this is the first plate that I did, and I actually decided I was going to tape it off because I didn't trust that the marker would not bleed underneath a ruler, because I'm going to use a ruler to actually mark in the borders, because I'm only wanting to doodle the edges of this plate, not the middle, because the middle is where you always put your food. So I'm here. Then I decided that I would use some Schminker masking fluid. Now, it is designed to be used on paper, but I tell you what, it works really well on porcelain. And if you want to paint over that and then have it masked, absolutely awesome product to be used on porcelain and glass as well as paper. So I just signed my name there to show you what the fine tip can do. So this is an awesome product and it works really well. So now I'm going to pick out a black pen, and I have a bendy ruler, so this is all dry, works really, really well. And I'm going to rub off the Peter in the middle. See, it's already rubbed off, came off very easily. Now I've got my porcelain pen. Now I tend to do a dot at each end so that I know where to start and to finish. I did one side and then I shook my pen and rubbed it down and then got more ink out and did the other side. Now I waited for that to dry and then I did the other two sides because I didn't want any bleeding to occur. So I'm doing the last two sides. Now in my Snapchat guide on blog on the Crafty Crusaders blog, I skipped this step altogether and just ruled it in after placing all 4 dots on the plate. Now I'm finding the natural divot in the corners, in the diagonal corners, and I'm mitering the edges because these are the borders of my doodles that I'm going to draw in. And each time I'm re-inking by shaking that pen and then just pressing it down onto the nib. So my first design, have a look, it's really easy. I'm just doing a series of semicircles in various sizes, and now all I'm going to do is follow the patterns of the original things, and some I'm going to only fill in and some I'm going to extend out of the top. This is a really, really easy Zen doodle pattern to do and highly, highly effective. And so you can see that the patterns of the circles sometimes overlap and sometimes don't. And there's no real drawing skills involved in needing to do a lot of these patterns. That's why I picked them, and yet they look really spectacular on a plate. And using a marker makes it so much easier to do. Imagine doing that with a paint pen, with a paintbrush. So now I'm doing some basic triangle shapes, random. So I'm just drawing lines and then making some random shapes. There's no real formal uniformity in that pattern. I wanted it random, and I'm just filling those in with lines emanating from the point. And because some of those points are all together, they create really dark and light patches. And so we just follow those. And I love the fact that you've got light and dark showing in different points. And it's a real contrast. So now I've decided I'm just going to draw a whole heap of circles. And I'm starting with small circles at this end. And gradually I'm going to go to the other end, and the circles are going to get bigger and bigger as I get to the other end. So this is literally just sitting there doodling, drawing circles. And this pen is a 1.5 nib, so it's not the smallest nib, but it's not chunky and huge, and so you can create some smaller details as well. And often as I was doing these circles, I would sit there and have a look and go, what are patterns forming, and do I have any spaces left? So here I made a conscious decision that I was going to start increasing some of the circle sizes, and you can start seeing that here, so that on the left it looks pretty dense, and then as we go further to the right it starts to look more airy because there's more white space and less black space. Lots of fun, very easy to do. And always it's important to note that when your ink starts to look a little bit grey, you need to shake the pen, and I've got that blotting page on the side and you can see the little pools of black ink. So now I'm just doing some zigzags on the fourth side, and I'm going to do some random patterns. Now I particularly love checkerboard, so I'm just doing some checker plate, which again is really, really simple and really effective as a border. One thing to note, and I will show you this in a further step, in a later step, is that once these are dry, you can actually go over them again and deepen the colour. So if at any point you're doing a design and it's a little bit grey, wait till it's completely dry and then go over it again. So what I wanted to do was to do some lines in between these, but I noticed that I was inadvertently forming some spiral and circle shapes in there, which kind of mirrored next to it. And then I decided that I wanted to put some arrows on those lines, just to add some interest. And that just makes it marry in with the curving nature of some of the designs, but it still looks particularly geometric. It gives a point of difference with some really block colour, but also some lightness of colour in the patterns in the middle. And the plate is finished. Now what I need to do is let it dry, and I'm going to take that tape off and that gum and rub it off and see what I get. And that, you have to be careful if you're using masking tape here, you have to be really careful. So you can see I've taken it off, and what I'm showing you here is that the edges are not perfect. Some of the edges did not work out. So all I'm doing is, the basic lines were there, but they weren't really nice and strong and bold. So all I'm doing is neatening up the corners with the pen and also straightening up those lines. Now I've decided that I'm going to colour in over those black checks because they looked a little bit watery, and I'm showing you that you can deepen the colour. You just have to wait till that bottom layer is particularly dry. You don't want to lift it up when it's only just formed a crust. And so any lines that you have there that you want to go over and you're confident to go over and fill in the blocks of colour, do that, because now's the time before you actually bake it in the oven. Looks really nice. I'm really happy with the results. So what I'm doing at the moment, which you can see just a little bit off camera, is it's running out of a little bit of ink, that marker, and I'm not renewing the ink by shaking it. And I'm just shadowing in those circles, and it's just a little dot of, a little swipe over the circles, and suddenly they start to look just a little bit more depth, have a little bit more depth, and they look a little bit deeper. So what you need to do to actually bake this so that it's dishwashing safe is you need to allow it to dry for 24 hours. Then you need to put it in a cold oven and set that oven to 150 degrees Celsius. Then bake it for 35 minutes. Then let it cool down in the oven and pull it out when it's cold. And then colours are resistant to dishwashing.